everyone, today's video is going to be another weekly meal plan video. I filmed one of these back in October time, I think, and you guys seem to really enjoy it, so I figured I would film another one of those today. If you've not seen that first video, basically I plan breakfast, lunch and dinner ideas for a whole week within a £10 budget. In the case of this video, everything came to £12.93, but if you look at the ingredients that you'd be using for each meals and you don't consider like the leftovers, it comes to £10.40. So pretty much within that £10 budget. It is quite a difficult budget to stick to, so I will say the meals can be quite repetitive. In the case of this meal plan, I've got one breakfast option and then 4 kind of main meal options that can be used for lunch or dinner. Obviously you can switch up the combinations each day, so you don't have to have the same 2 meals every day for 7 days, but that's kind of how I've done it for this video. Definitely let me know if you want to see more of these, if you want me to look at different supermarkets. I've used Asda in the case of this video, but obviously if you don't have an Asda near you, you might have a more expensive supermarket where you need to be even tighter with budgets. Definitely let me know in a comment below, or I could also look at different price ranges. So today's is £10, but I could maybe look at a slightly larger price range as well. Also, in terms of these videos, there are a few things that I don't include in the budget, so kind of things that I would consider store-cupboard ingredients, things like seasonings, spices, herbs, oils, butters, that kind of thing. I think for the most part a lot of people will have those in their cupboards already, but if you don't, obviously that will mean that the budget will be slightly more this week, just so you can get those store cupboard ingredients in as well. And I do think obviously this can be quite repetitive for some people, but it can just be used as like a loose guide or a little bit of inspiration. You might find you already have some things in anyway, which means you can switch up the meals throughout the week. For example, you might have a cereal left over from a previous week that you could have for breakfast instead, to switch that up, or one night you might not fancy what you've made for dinner, so you might have something in the freezer that you can have instead. I definitely recommend making things in bulk if you're able to do so. So if you're able to buy double the ingredients each week, make double the portions of food and then freeze half, it means in the future you'll be able to have a little bit more variety because you'll already have some meals made in the freezer, so you can switch up a little bit more often. But in today's video, I'll just show you everything that I've planned for this week of food, starting with breakfast, where I've just kind of got one breakfast idea throughout the week, and that is Weetabix with soy milk and some frozen berries. Obviously, this might not be everyone's preference, but I did think Weetabix is quite a good thing that you can switch up and personalise. I know that some people use Weetabix like biscuits as like a toast equivalent and they put butter and jam on it. I've never tried that. I think that sounds absolutely revolting in my opinion, but that is one potential option. You can also obviously have it hot, so you can just kind of mush up the biscuits with the milk and heat it up like a porridge. Or the way that I normally have it is just the standard biscuits with milk, maybe a little bit of sugar if you prefer it sweeter, and then the frozen berries as well you can switch up. If you like them cold, you can just add frozen berries as they are, or you could heat them up in the microwave and maybe add a little bit of sugar like that and make like a jam. I just figured kind of in general, Weetabix is a fairly versatile breakfast, so one that might be slightly harder to get bored of compared to just like a standard cereal. So that is what I went with for the breakfast option. In terms of prices, a carton of soy milk is 55p, so that will last the whole week for the cereal. The frozen berries were £1.65 for 500 grams, so again that can be spread out throughout the week, and that will pretty much be one of your 5 a day if you break it out equally throughout the week. And then you can get a box of wheat biscuits, so obviously the non-branded Weetabix, for £2.12. You get 48 of the biscuits in the box, so once you've broken that out by 2 per day, that ends up being 62p used just for the kind of individual portion of Weetabix. Obviously this goes without saying, portion sizes vary. For everything in this, I've just gone by like the recommended serving size, which we all know doesn't have to be followed and isn't often followed. I feel like everyone's diets vary so significantly, everyone's portions vary so significantly, even from day to day. I would switch up how much I would eat, so you can't really base things off that, but just to make my life easier, that is kind of what I go by with these things. So the price might vary very slightly depending on how many Weetabix you have each morning. I feel like I normally go for 3 or 4, so the portion size definitely doesn't reflect my serving size, but it might reflect yours, so that is what I've gone with. And then in terms of the lunch and dinner options, I tried to go for things that you could have for both lunch or dinner, and I tried to use the same ingredients throughout, just so that if you can only buy those ingredients that week, they will cover all your meals. You don't have to buy like 50 different things and just use like a tiny amount of each thing, because that obviously adds up. So I went for 2 different wrap options, one a roasted veg and hummus wrap, and then one more of like a burrito. So for a bag of wraps it is 89p, and that comes with 8 wraps. So just for the 7 it's 78p. Obviously you can have more than one wrap, but again I'm just going off like serving size, so I am including 7 wraps in this meal plan, and that is 78p. A pot of hummus is 80p, so that can be spread throughout 4 different wraps, 50 grams of hummus per wrap, and you can use up that whole pot of hummus for 80p. And then I got a few different vegetables that are used throughout a few of the different meals. So a bag of peppers for £1.35, you get 700 grams in there, so that can last a few different meals. 500 grams of onions for 30p, 400 grams of mushrooms for £1, and then also a head of lettuce for 47p. So those are the various different kind of veg bits that I would pick up for this meal plan. In terms of the wraps, I would roast 300 grams of the peppers, 200 grams of the mushrooms, and an onion all together for the roasted veg element, and then I would just add that to the wrap with 50 grams of hummus, and that's like a really nice lunch. Another thing, I feel like these videos come with so many disclaimers. I haven't included snacks in this meal plan, so that is another thing to consider. I would have snacks with this wrap. I wouldn't just have a wrap by itself normally. Things like fruit and crisps and nuts and chocolate, etc. I've not included, so that is another thing to consider if you are following this meal plan. But just for the wrap by itself, those are the ingredients that I would get. And then for the other 3 wraps, I would have these more of like a burrito style. So I would use about 70 grams of rice between the 3 wraps. You don't really need a full portion of rice, I find, when it's inside the wrap, because there's only so much you can fit in a wrap without it all just spilling out. You could also switch this up though and have it more of like a burrito bowl and cook more rice and have like a salady bowl mix if you didn't want it in the wrap itself. I prefer having it in the wrap, so I put on my list 70 grams of rice between the 3 wraps, a can of kidney beans which is 30p, and then 1 onion, 200 grams of the peppers, and also the head of lettuce split between the 3 wraps. Obviously you're going to want to season your veg and beans, so I always have some sort of fajita seasoning in my cupboard that I would use for that. If you don't have fajita seasoning but you have individual spices, things like chili, paprika, garlic, onion granules, that kind of thing, something that makes it nice and smoky, that's my personal favourite. Like the smoky barbecue fajita seasoning is my absolute fave, so that is another thing that you'll need in that budget that I've not included. But altogether that makes quite a nice filling meal. In terms of sides for this, I would maybe get like some tortilla chips if I had them in the cupboard, some guacamole if I had that in. There's definitely like a lot of good sides or snacks you could have with a burrito, but just for the standard burrito by itself, that is what I've gone for. And then in terms of the other 2 meal ideas, I've gone for a bolognese and a curry, both of which are lentil based. So I've gone for a 500 gram bag of green lentils, which is £1.15. You can cook these up. I personally prefer the canned green lentils, but obviously when you buy them canned already, it is more expensive. So you can buy a lot more for a lot less money if you buy them dry. So the whole bag is £1.15, and you can cook all of that and spread it throughout the lentil curry meal and the bolognese. For the curry meal, I've also added some brown rice to the shopping list. So 350 grams of brown rice, which is 280 grams for the curry, and also the 70 grams previously mentioned for the burritos, comes to 29p. And obviously you buy a kilogram bag, so you'll have lots of leftovers for the following weeks, which is always nice. And then for the curry as well, I get a can of coconut milk, which is 69p. This is something that I actually make all the time for lunch. It's like the quickest, easiest, cheapest lunch ever. You literally just have to cook up the rice and then mix the green lentils, make sure they're all drained and everything, with the coconut milk and some curry powder. Not authentic in the slightest, but it tastes really nice and it's just so quick and easy. If I only have like half an hour on my lunch break, I can make that, eat it, and still have time to spare, which is just so nice when something's so easy and it's also really filling and warm and hearty. It's also the kind of thing that you can customize really easy. You can throw in a bunch of spinach if you have it. You could add other cans of beans, you could add some chickpeas, you could add some other vegetables. Obviously you can completely jazz it up in whichever way you like, but just for a really simple meal, I really love the combination of the coconut milk, lentils, and the curry powder. And then in terms of the spaghetti bolognese, this is something that I make all the time. I always batch cook this and have portions in my freezer. If I ever don't have a meal planned, I can always have spaghetti bolognese. So you can get a bag of 500 grams of spaghetti for 20p. So for 3 portions, that's 12p. And then for the bolognese sauce itself, I've got 200 grams of those lentils, 200 grams of peppers, 200 grams of mushrooms, an onion, and then also a carton of passata, which is an additional 33p. I essentially just chop all the veg and sweat it down in a little bit of oil, add the cooked lentils, add the passata, mix it together, season with some salt, pepper, garlic granules, onion granules, basil, oregano, whatever flavors you like in your bolognese, throw it in and then just cook it down for a few minutes until it's like a really good consistency. I sometimes like adding some gravy granules to my bolognese, so I recommend them if you have them to hand. Honestly, I feel like you can throw anything in a bolognese and it will taste good. So that is what I've included for my fourth and final meal. I hope you guys have enjoyed this video. Let me know if you found it helpful. And like I said at the start, let me know if there's any other supermarkets you want me to look at or any other budgets. Or perhaps in my next meal plan video, I can actually get all the ingredients and show them to you guys and then cook the meals as well, so you get an idea of how I would make them. But that is it for today's video. Thank you so much for watching and I'll see you in my next one. Bye.